So how do they move then if they have all this high pressure in their body? What's their muscle system like? So their movement is a style of movement called undulatory propulsion. And in undulatory propulsion for these guys, essentially what they do is they have longitudinal muscles that run the length of their body, and they can contract those to cause their body to kind of curl into almost like a letter C, kind of like a sickle shape. And then to straighten back out, all they do is release that muscle. The pressure in their body forces their body to straighten back out. Because of this, they lack circular muscles. Circular muscles would go around the body. Instead of from head to tail, it would go around the waist, like a belt does around our body. And that would help do things like contract and expand the body. But since they have such high pressure in there, they just simply don't need those. They've evolved without them. But working together by pulling these muscles and releasing them and letting the pressure straighten you back out, it produces a type of motion that undulates. And so we call it undulatory propulsion, and it allows them to move through a median. Reproduction for roundworms is actually really neat. First of all, their anatomy, most of their body is full of actually just reproductive organs, especially females. Females can grow a lot larger than males because of all how large the ovaries are on the inside, because of all the eggs that they produce. And by the way, notice that I mentioned there are different males than females. This is the first time that we see a truly dioecious phyla, meaning that this is the first phyla where we actually have separate males and females. Now, it's occurred in some species of different phylas before, but not the phyla as a whole. So this is where we're actually seeing separation of the genders into two separate beings, or two separate individuals for the entire phyla. So again, the females tend to be larger, and that's a term called sexual dimorphism, when the difference in some of the traits within a species is split along gender lines. So in order for them to reproduce, the male has a specialized feature on his tail called a spicule. Those spicules are really stiff, and they're like a little blade. He uses that to cut open the female, and then he'll lay inside of her, not his entire body, but he'll lay inside of her and he'll deposit sperm. This sperm can either be held for a little bit in a feature called a spermathecae, or it can be used right then to go ahead and fertilize eggs. Weird, but that's what they do. Then the female will lay these eggs, and since she's laying eggs, she's oviparous, and the eggs, depending on the water temperature, will hatch within a few months. And out pops a baby worm. Baby roundworm, and it's really cool. So the last thing I want to mention is that they do have that system for pushing, the digestive system for pushing waste out, but other than that, cellular waste is generally removed through diffusion, just as it was in flatworms and in jellyfish. They do have some tubes, just like flatworms did, that help them remove some waste a little bit more efficiently, but they do not have the flame cells or the protonephridia that were found in flatworms. They don't need that because of the high pressure inside of their body. That alone helps flush out a lot of the cellular waste. So they simply don't need that. But the tube that does run through the body to help remove waste actually exit near their anterior, so it's near the head. So in some species you can actually see there's a little excretory pore that helps remove some of the waste in their body. So circulation of nutrients to the body and getting respiration, so getting O2 in and getting CO2 out, all occurs through diffusion, and the high pressure in the body helps with that. So real quick, I want to kind of point out some different worms, because these worms there's so many of these worms, and they're so highly diversified that there are a lot of different orders, and some of the lines between them are actually kind of skewed. So rather than go through orders of nematodes, I'm just going to point out some of the more common ones that we know of. So the first one I'll point out is a guinea worm. So a guinea worm, if you notice, it's really long and thin, so that just kind of aids to the name of nematodes, meaning thread-like species. A guinea worm, in places where fresh water and fresh drinking water is going to be an issue, places where your toilet and your drinking water source are generally the same source of water, you'll see things like flukes, the flatworms, but also roundworms, parasitic roundworms. The number of cases are a lot higher. So imagine if you had a cut on your foot and you went and stood in this water, and there was a larva for a guinea worm in the water, and you got a cut on your foot, and it were to get into that cut. Guinea worms actually lodge themselves in your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is the way that your body returns extracellular fluid that just kind of washes out of your cells, because remember, your cells are semi-permeable. When some of the water leaves your cells, gravity pulls it down to your feet. Your lymphatic system helps pump that back up, and it actually dumps it and deposits it into your heart to mix back in with your blood. Well, these guinea worms will actually lodge themselves in the lymphatic system, and they cause it to block, and that can lead to a condition called elephantitis, and you can Google pictures of that on your own. But in order for them to be able to get oxygen, they still have to be exposed to air. So they'll keep the entrance to the wound nice and clean and open. And doctors will actually take and put Vaseline over the wound, which closes it off, so the guinea worm can't breathe. They can't respirate through diffusion. So the guinea worm starts to come out, and when they do, doctors will simply take a little wrap. They'll pull the worm out a little bit, they'll wrap it around it, and then they'll tape it off and just let it sit there. When the worm relaxes, they can pull it out a little bit more, and then the worm will start to resist. You don't want to pull it when it resists, because if the worm breaks, you have a dead organism inside your body that's going to start rotting, and that can lead to needle-toxicity and other types of septic conditions inside your body and kill you. But yeah, they'll pull these suckers out a little at a time. Let's see, this individual had one on their ankles that they're pulling out. It can take a couple of days to get it out to a couple of weeks. This one has two of them on here. It's one in this spot, one in that spot. It may even look like it may have a few others in there. But yeah, you want to get these out. Because leaving them in can lead to elephantitis. And again, look up those pictures and you'll see what I'm talking about. So let's talk about pinworms for a second. Pinworms are here. They're here in southern Mississippi. They're here all over the U.S. They're everywhere. They're extremely common. If you've ever had your butt itch while you're sleeping, most people refuse to answer that question, and their eyes get really big, because pretty much all of us have had our butt itches while we sleep. So yes, this is an anus, and you'll notice that all around this anus are little worms. And what is happening is that when you get pinworms, usually you get the eggs on your hands from being outside, because again, they're everywhere. You may get them from coming in contact with another person. If you don't wash your hands before you eat, you put your fingers in your mouth, then you can get the eggs in your system. They'll live in your digestive tract. They go all the way down to your colon, where it's nice and warm. There's plenty of material for them to eat, but also there's a great view, because every once in a while they can crawl out of your anus, which sounds funny to say, and they actually love this area right here, because all of these little folds of skin, it's usually moist in this area, it's warm in this area, and they can deposit their eggs in the folds of the skin, and then they go back in. And as they go in and out and deposit their eggs, it kind of tickles a little bit, and it causes us to itch. So at nighttime, you reach back and scratch your butthole, and you go back to sleep. You wake up the next morning and you touch your partner, and good morning, sweetheart, how are you today? Or you don't wash your hands before you shake hands with somebody else that you greet that morning, and boom, you spread the eggs. So it's weird to think of, but that's extremely common, and that's what pinworms do. So another big one I like to point out are heartworms. So a lot of us are pet owners, and we understand that our pets have to have heartworm medication. Heartworms are a roundworm, and the reason why they're called heartworms is that they actually live inside of the valves and chambers in our hearts, or in the hearts of, in this case, the hearts of pets. When they reproduce, they can get large in number, and some species are actually pretty big. And they literally physically block the flow of blood in the heart. And you can see from this example, here's one, when they cut it open, it is full of worms. These worms can be spread through mosquitoes, and here in the South we have lots of mosquitoes. Your dog and cats are going to get bitten by mosquitoes, and there's a high chance that they can actually pick up heartworms. It's very important that you medicate your pets for heartworms, especially here in the South, and to do so more than once over the course of their lifetime. Because the last thing you want you to do is have your pet die because of this, which is easily preventable just with some simple some vermicide medication. So please make sure you go in and do that. So that's a lot about nematodes. They're really kind of neat in their own way. They have a lot of similarities with Platyhelminthes, but then they have a lot of characteristics of their own. And they're a pretty cool little group of worms. I hate that they're mostly all parasites because that's disgusting. I've got some videos that are linked on the Canvas channel. Make sure you go and you check those out. And if you have any questions, give me a call.